Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably witnessed the havoc that Baron Samedi is currently creating in Smite. The god is very strong in many different regards, especially regarding his damage though, and also some other things along with that, like his sustain, as well as his damage resistance through his ultimate, and all of that kind of led to one thing. Hi-Rez very quickly decided that Baron Samedi is too strong, and with the upcoming patch he's already gonna get various nerfs. And that's the nerfs we're gonna look into today. In this context, I'd like to thank Flareboot, the creator of Word of Thoth, who has created a big chart of things regarding Baron Samedi, regarding his damage values and how they will change with the upcoming patch, in focus of his first ability, Vivid Gaze, which I will be using for this video, so that's his work, not mine. He asked me if I wanted to talk about it, and that's what I'm gonna do. But let's start at the start with the nerfs that happened, or will happen with next patch rather. First, there are some bug fixes, which are technically just that, but are also nerfs to the character, as they nerf his damage output as well. The first one being, fixed an issue where Baron Samedi gained an additional 10% of his magical power while consuming Baron's Brew. This part was something that was left over from another test build, which was originally intended to be part of Baron Samedi's kit, but then Hi-Rez figured it was just too complicated to keep it in, too annoying to have to deal with the potion and the damage micromanagement at the same time. So sometimes you want to use a potion, sometimes you want more damage, but you don't really want to do both at the same time. As such, that was removed, but accidentally still ended up in the game. So that's gone, and that's gonna lower his damage numbers a little bit. The other one is fix an issue where life of the party couldn't be used while crippled. That's actually a little bit of a buff to him, as he can now use that while being crippled, though the instances of that are relatively limited anyways. And that brings us to the actual nerf section. The first one here is the Asteria Nerve. Now, Hysteria activates when you hit an enemy with an ability, and at max Hysteria he at the moment gets 25% extra damage on all of his abilities, as well as all item effects and others. That is going to be decreased by 5%, and from the next patch on will only deal 20% extra damage. This will not be unimpactful, but I don't think it is the most impactful change of all, simply because there are many situations where you can burst a target before they even reach full Hysteria, so in those situations it doesn't matter all that much. The second nerf, on the other hand, is big. Vivid Gaze fixed an issue where the second beam hit for 30% of the first beam's damage, rather than the listed 15%. So this was not intended after all, and it's going down to half the damage of what it was before. 15%, quite a decent chunk of damage down there. And not only that, the scaling is also changed. Reduced magical power scaling from 80% to 70%. Now the strange thing is, if you look at the current in-game description, it's actually described as 60% scaling. So it kind of seems like the description was wrong all along, and he had 20% extra scaling of what he was supposed to have. His base damage values are also still not correct. It still says 290 for the highest rank, and it should still be 280 unless that was changed, in which case it would not be included in the patch notes, which would be an issue in itself. Then Wrap It Up gets a fix, which is also a nerf. Fix an issue where targets with root immunity were still being rooted. Another one that definitely impacts some characters, but not that many. And life of the party decreased base damage on hit from 140 to 420 to 100 to 380. So 40 of all ranks here. But the percentage damage from the ultimate stays the same, and that in many situations is the bigger factor, especially since it goes against tanks so well too. With all of that in mind, how much damage does Baron Samedi realistically lose on his abilities? How much does this translate into? For that, we look into the charts that Flareboot made, and we will go through a few different steps. First thing we test is the damage when we have 100 power on Baron Samedi, then all the different ranks of Vivid Gaze, his one, and then the same effects or damage of Vivid Gaze with the effect of Brew added, with the effect of Hysteria added, and with the effect of Brew and Hysteria added. And then we look at the differences in this damage between 5.11 and 5.12. And after that, we look at the same thing, but this time with 600 magical power, so more towards late game. Here we can run the same comparisons again, and then we kind of see how much damage is lost throughout the course of a game. Let's start with 100 magical power. What you can see here is the damage for all ranks on patch 5.11. So it starts with 160 damage on the first hit and 48 damage on the second hit, and goes down to 360 plus 108. So a total damage of 208 all the way down to 486 depending on the rank. Now what happens if we apply the nerf to that? The second hit's damage will be halved and 10% scaling will be taken off. In that case, the first rank now deals 150 damage plus 22.5 on the second hit. The last rank, the highest rank, deals 350 damage plus 52.5. So a total damage of 172.5 to 402.5. That means only from the direct nerfs to this ability, we already lose a fair amount of damage. On the first rank, this is 35 damage. On the last rank, this is 65.5 damage per use of the ability. That will definitely rack up over time in the game. But there's more. Second, we have the brew. The brew amplifies your damage by 10% on the old patch, but doesn't do the same thing on the new patch. On the old patch, the 1 would deal 218 damage on rank 1, up to 478 damage on rank 5. With the nerf applied and no longer any extra damage from brew coming in, the damage is now 172.5 to 402.5. So the total damage loss goes up a little bit more, roughly by 10. We lose 45.9 on the lowest rank and 75.9 on the highest rank. And now we apply Hysteria to this as well. Hysteria used to do 25% damage, now does 20% damage. So the total damage with Hysteria on rank 1 of this ability would now be 260, and on the highest rank it would be 585. Applying the nerfs to that, we have a total damage with Hysteria of 207 and of 483 respectively. That means with the nerf we lose even more damage here, now 53 on the lowest rank and 102 damage on the highest rank. Now keep in mind the situation, once again, is not the most common one as Hysteria is not applied all the time, but it's also not that uncommon, and losing 100 damage in the process here on a relatively low power value definitely means the nerf is quite impactful. And last but not least, we also throw in Hysteria and brew at the same time. In that case, we end up with 272 damage on the lowest rank and 598 damage on the highest rank on the old patch, and with 207 damage on the new patch up to 483 damage. That means in case you have all the nerfs applied plus brew plus Hysteria, the damage gets lowered by 66 on the lowest rank to 115 on the highest rank. But now let's see how much damage we can really lose by amping the power up to 600. In this case, we'll just look at the rank 5 damage, because when you have 600 power, you're definitely gonna have rank 5 of this ability no matter what. The total damage in 5.11 without any extra buffs was 988. In 5.12, the total damage is 805. So even without anything else added to it, you lose a solid 183 damage at 600 power. That is definitely an impactful factor. If we're looking at brew being implemented into this, then we end up at 1050.4 damage in patch 5.11, and in the new patch it will be 805 once again, as it doesn't get increased. As such, we end up with a 245.4 damage difference, only from the brew and nothing else. Now with the Hysteria, we would end up at 1235 damage on the old patch, which is actually pretty crazy. And on the new patch, it will be 966. Damage difference here is 269. And last but not least, we obviously throw all of this together again. You would get up to 1313 damage by using the brew with full Hysteria on the old patch on the 1. Doing that on the upcoming patch only results in the damage value we already had before, 966. That means the total damage loss possible just from the 1 at the same power is 347. And that does not factor in that you can lose even more damage through things like Soul Gem that you can also add on top of that. As such, the nerf will definitely be impactful, And once again, I think there is value in considering to level the 2 first as well now, as that will have the same scaling and slightly higher base damage without the second hit, because it doesn't have a second hit, but it has a heal instead and it's much easier to place on the wave. So if you're getting pressured, keep that in mind. I again still don't believe that some of these nerfs are completely over this. I'm expecting maybe some more cooldown reduction changes. Flair also said he thinks that the damage mitigation on the ult may be nerfed. We'll see what exactly it ends up being, but I think Hi-Rez is not quite done with him yet unless he completely underperforms after next patch. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. Again, thanks to Flairboot for giving me this information. Other than that, if you're new to the channel, click the sub button with the bell, it really helps me out. And see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.